right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today on the show. We have our guest, Susie. She came and talked with us a few weeks ago, and this is part two of the series. We also have Sherry here. She's going to introduce Susie, refresh your memory on what we discussed last time. But we're going to talk about today psych wards. What to do if you find yourself in a psych ward. We're also going to continue with Susie's story as well. And so we are in Relentless Hope Studios. We're so glad to be here to discuss topics that are important to survivors. We're learning ourselves, and so we just want to pass that knowledge on to you. So why don't you take it away, Sherry?
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you everyone for being here in the Relentless Hope Studio. We do have Susie back again to do part two, and I'll just quickly introduce her and then we'll start with some prayer before we welcome Susie.
Thank you.
Now, if you didn't get any of the introductory information or any of the Susie's story last time, I encourage you to go to the Relentless Hope YouTube channel. It's also on the relentlesshopeforyou.org website, a link there to Susie's part one of the podcast. We did mention psychiatric hospitalizations in that episode, and some of the things that had occurred in Susie's life and also to her children. And so she talked a little bit about the LDS blessings. The temporal blessings were removed. That's later on in the part one. We're going to continue today with her sharing more of her story. So Susie has shared that she has a love for many things, and I don't remember them offhand, but why don't we start just welcoming you here today again, Susie. It's so good to have you here. And I just want to have people watch the part two or part one before they watch part two, if possible. Otherwise, you want to just tell them a little bit about you because I won't do you justice.
Love art, design, sports, and above all, my children and protecting them and hopefully figuring out how to stop all of the abuse that's going on and, at least attempt to help other people get out and Cindy and Sherry, this is where for Relentless Hope with what you offer there is so amazing because there's so much needed. There's so many aspects to this that, I was actually even thinking today, especially during the holidays, it's difficult because right now it is just me and my children. We have no family and it makes it especially hard because as we know, a lot of SRA, well, there's just a lot of abuse that goes around during the holidays because holidays numbers are important, special events are important. And so you have the abuse, but then when you get out, it becomes neglect part because then you're missing out. You see all sorts of other people sharing time with their family or different things like that. So
Yes, it's a very, very difficult time of year. And I always start out the podcast with prayer, and I did not do that. Before you go any farther,
yeah,
I will go ahead and do that.
great.
Thank you, Susie. Lord God, we do pray for all the survivors out there. This is a very extremely difficult time of year. Lots of abuse is done this time of year. Lots of reminders, lots and lots of connections, both with abusers and families. Also, just associations this time of year with whether it's church, whatever church survivors come from. There's a lot of spiritual abuse that's connected with this. So we do ask, Father, that you would protect and give comfort to those who are hurting, and anyone that watches this podcast, that they would only hear what you want them to hear, that's timely for them, and protect us as we do this podcast, protect the technology, protect Susie, protect all of the survivors. Um, the enemy is ruthless and doesn't want freedom or any of the things that Jesus came to give to survivors, to heal them, um, and to set them free. So we do ask that all of those things would be broken off in Jesus' name, and that survivors would freely be able to have the healing and the hope that there is. And we do pray that you help Susie to be able to express the hope that she's had, even though she's still trying to keep abuse from her children and herself, and the awful long-lasting effects that this type of abuse does. And we do pray that you would protect all of those survivors from psychiatric hospitals and the fraudulent practices and abusive things that are going on inside of those institutions. And we do pray that you set those captives free, Lord. Be with us today and guide our conversation. And I ask that you protect Relentless Hope and Cindy and all of the people that make up Relentless Hope. Thank you for the amazing things that they're doing for survivors, and that they don't give up and they don't give in to the attacks of the enemy. I just pray that you strengthen them, Lord. And thank you that we can walk by faith, not by sight, and that we stand on the solid rock of Jesus Christ. And we ask that the eyes would be opened of those who have been extremely harmed by the name Jesus, and that someday all of that will be wiped away, and they will be able to not only say that name, they will be able to have that really close relationship with you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you,
Thank you.
Susie. I
Thank
just
you.
couldn't go any farther without that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to pick up where we dropped off. Maybe a little summary from you, Susie, um, where you're at now. What are some of your challenges that you're dealing with this time of year? I this topic of psych wards and how they're being used to continue the abuse, even as adults, is just
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it from so many survivors.
Yeah.
And some of the hospitals you've named are the exact same hospitals that I have heard from other survivors as well. McCady being number one is like the
Mm-hmm.
worst, um, because they have underground facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, tell me what's going on.
The reason I don't want to show my face uh, is possible backlash from people, from the different levels. Like I said, government. There's government levels. There's healthcare levels. Then the religious sources, and then also individual private perpetrators who would come back and say, "See,
Yeah.
look how crazy she still is." And last time, I will try not to be as cynical as I was on the last podcast. As I listened to myself, it made me cringe a little bit about being so cynical, uh, because this is serious and it actually does happen to people, and it's still currently happening to people. And like you said, the not only the psychiatric facilities, but their counterparts on the out treatment programs and things like that, they are the ones that also then perpetuate the abuse. And it just keeps people in the cycle of abuse under the guise of we're helping you, which is really, really even more devastating on a level because when you get when you when you need mental health support and then you develop trust and bonds with people who you think are helping when they are keeping you in the system and keeping you sick, then that's a big problem also. And I will say
Yeah.
it's very in the state of Utah, we're very high up there in mental health problems, depression. I mean, all of the drugs that are prescribed, right?
Mhm. Yep.
We're
Number
at the top.
one. Yes.
And to me, in my own personal opinion, it goes back to the levels and the depth of the abuse that goes on here. It also spans out into drug addiction, right? Where people don't know what else to do, and so they go use illegal drugs or self medicate and use prescribed drugs illegally. And so it it gets really difficult on how deep it goes.
Well, they've got that carrot too because most survivors don't have a lot of money. They can't afford
Right.
counseling. So the churches will say, "Oh, well, we'll pay for your counseling, but you got to go where we want you to go." And they're sent to these compromised counselors who are actually working on behalf of the church. And I'm not just talking LDS, we're talking Catholic, we're talking Baptist,
Right.
so um, that, and a survivor who is desperate to be, to calm down, uh,
Mm-hmm.
they'll take that option. And as you said, Susie, they'll form a relationship and think that they can trust, and then they find out that the counselor is telling them things or asking them things that don't feel good, don't feel comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In
And
fact,
it also, oh,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, three of our survivors have told us they've been raped by their counselor, and all three of them are here in Utah. Uh,
Yes.
they were male counselors, and I'm not going to say their names, obviously, because we don't want to get in trouble, but they're big names that you might suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the particular counselors, he he gave counseling sessions at his home. So he took the person in a shed behind his house and abused her. We also know of psychologists that are hired by Utah State they do evaluations for court cases.
Right.
And so they'll do evaluations and they'll make suggestions to the judge, the court, lawyers. They'll diagnose the survivor with they'll make them look crazy, essentially.
Yes. Yep.
And they'll, on top of it, try to formulate a way to take their kids away from them based on that diagnosis. So it's a very big system here, ongoing. We hear from moms all the time, just as you went through,
Yep.
Susie. So go on, continue.
Well, yeah, and part of that too is when so if you're on the drug addicted side, right, you then have the criminal record of drug distribution or whatever. There's a whole plethora, right? For mine was actually a criminal charge. I was in a psychosis. So this happened. So to pick up just where we left off it was COVID 2020, and I was in a psychosis because at this point I literally was only in contact with the perpetrator of my children's abuse. Then you add COVID and the stress of all of that, strange and And literally, like I said, I had no other support other than this perpetrator um, of my children, and then which was also the same perpetrator as my children's father. And so my children's father was not in a psychological state or a mental state where he was able to not only not help, he wasn't able to help me, but he wasn't able to help himself because he was continuing to be triggered by this person. So I was in a psychosis, and I had an event that happened. And when this event happened, I was taken again to a psychiatric facility. And then I was white sheeted, like you've talked about. If you want to explain that is.
Well, usually what happens is the first color you're sheeted with is pink. Pink sheeted means you are involuntarily taken to a hospital or a psych ward for mental evaluation. They can only keep you there for 3 days and then they have to let you go. But what happens are the perpetrators will then have you white sheeted, which means they can keep you pretty much as long as they want, because it's based on a psychiatrist's evaluation of you and your situation. They can keep you if they feel that you are genuinely a harm to others or a harm to yourself. Now, what we've noticed as this has happened to several survivors is that they're generally kept for 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason why is because most of these survivors are on Medicaid and they're committing Medicaid fraud. They know they can only keep you for 3 weeks and the Medicaid stops paying. So almost every survivor I've talked to has been kept for at least 2 to 3 weeks. And then they let them go because they're like, well, we got our money and this is the most we're going to get. So these particular hospitals, and they're all over Salt Lake City metro area, are participating in this Medicaid fraud, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, that is the scam, and it's cyclical. And I thought it was interesting, Susie, that you had mentioned that at least on one of the occasions you were sent to a psych ward is one of your bishops or stake presidents had suggested that is what you should do. So the church kind of helps get the person pink sheeted. Then
Right.
they'll call MCOT or they'll call Uni to come get you. And when Uni steps in or when MCOT steps in, you're trapped
Mm-hmm.
because they
Yep.
can do anything they want with you. And even if you're being calm, cool, and collective, they're still going to take you. They're still going to say, hey, we just want to check out, make sure you're safe and okay. And a lot of survivors go willingly because they're being kind.
Right.
And then when they get into the psych ward, it's a whole different scenario. So it sounds like that's what happened to you.
Yes. And for this instance, so I've been in psychiatric treatment centers 4 different times and 3 different psychiatric. So in 2020 was my third psychiatric event.
Yeah.
Now, see, what's difficult is they handcuffed me, and if you remember my story from earlier, that was part of my abuse.
Right.
And so I ended up, I do remember having, and when you do have psychosis, you do have some parts of memories that you do have. There's things that you remember and that you don't remember. I do remember being triggered to have a psychological seizure. And during this event, I don't remember. I remember being in the ambulance, handcuffed to the gurney. And I woke up, I was handcuffed to this gurney, not knowing what was going on, but being untriggered again because I was handcuffed, not knowing what was going on. And then medicated. They injected me with a medication. And then I woke up again in the hospital.
I'm so sorry, Susie. All of that is so re-traumatizing, and when you're already like in a state of mind where it's hard to think, and then there's handcuffs that are you're being treated like a criminal instead of getting the care that you need and deserve. It happens way too often. I've experienced it. I won't go into my story, but 4 years ago I experienced again, as much as I've recovered, an incident where after a knee replacement and lack of sleep, I wasn't making much sense. And so when I was evaluated, even though I wasn't a harm to myself or others, it's like I was treated like a criminal. And all you need is to have someone listen to you and that you can talk to that can help you through what you're going through and listen to you. And they do not need police. They don't need all these means of like what you're going to be violent.
Right. Well, and the funny
Well,
thing is Salt Lake City, the greater Salt Lake City area, has set up a special police unit for mental health cases. Or they had. I haven't looked into it over the last few years and what they've done, but I don't know. They didn't have it, or they didn't have it at the time of this incident, or they didn't staff it. And I've had other instances with interactions with police where even when you do explain your condition, they still do not, they're still very aggressive and forceful. In fact, in the state of Utah, they have a sticker that you can get from your mental health care provider that says you have an invisible condition, and you put it on your license. It's just a little sticker, and it's supposed to, the police are supposed to be trained to understand that there's something else going on. For instance, if you're just pulled over or whatever. And even after having that, it has not made a difference.
Fortunately, they don't get the training that they need to adequately help people that are in a mental health situation. And
well,
even
so
in
much of
the
the time
trauma
the police are
centers.
involved.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yep.
mean,
So you have PTSD, right, from the police officer, and even getting, like I said, even getting pulled over, it triggers that anxiety, right? We all have anxiety anyway when just even getting pulled over. I even just seeing someone else being pulled over triggers my PTSD, and so it takes a lot to get through that. And I can go
well,
into more of that. But
as you were saying, Sherry, it's really survivors just need someone understanding that they can talk to. Because the other day, this particular survivor I was talking to, I was able to calm her down. Not me, it's God within me. I don't want to take credit for this, but I was just like, girl, this is Christmas season. Your parts are just on edge. they're expecting something bad
Right.
to happen and they are overwhelmed. And this is why you're having suicidal thoughts. But you're going to make it. This is going to pass. You're going to talk with your parts, do your parts work, let them know that you love them and you get to know them and find out why they're so anxious and talk that
Yep.
through with them. And I said, you're going to be
Yes.
fine. You're going to be fine. And we're going to help get you out of this situation. Now, what we did tell her is, and this is what happens is survivors will innocently ask for help. They're going to say, yeah, I am
Mm-hmm.
suicidal. I am psychosis. But that is basically the floor mat for these people to come and make decisions on your behalf. And they are going to pink slip you every chance they get so
Yeah.
that you can't get away.
Right.
And so, what we'd like to say is if you're one of those survivors and you need someone to talk to, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to help calm you down and work with those parts. And so you don't have to go to someone and say, hey, I'm feeling suicidal, because that's just the key word for them to know
Right.
that, oh, they're vulnerable. Let's get her into a psych hospital and then we can do whatever we want with her.
Right.
So continue, Susie.
Well, so yeah, so then this particular, well, and that's the other thing is when you are in the psychiatric treatment center or ward in the hospitals, I think we talked a little bit about this before, but they have the different levels. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I was able to go out into the general population, but I had a singular room where I was being recorded and had video camera on me. And they also then, um, there's all sorts of triggers. Again, like I said, if for me, my word was sleep instead of resting. Um, and so, again, some normal person walking or some
Yeah.
nurse saying, just get some sleep, has no idea that they're triggering this massive
Yeah.
abuse. And so, um, and
Yes,
I,
that
I,
activates parts that have had that code used
right,
to control them.
right. And so then if you're semi-coherent, then you do get triggered, and then you don't know what reaction and what part of you is going to react and how you're going to react. Um, for me, I do remember this in this psychiatric um, hospitalization. There were multiple times where they would hold me down and injected me. I'm guessing with Haldol, and um, I did come out with a shoulder injury. My shoulder was injured um, as a, I mean, they had multiple security guards holding me down on top of the nursing staff and injected me. I remember in the neck and then in the thigh at the same time.
In the neck. What?
Yeah,
That's horrible.
yeah, yeah. And so,
Yeah.
Being
Is
held down by people and being injected that way is it feels to the survivor like it's abuse all over again. And it is
yeah.
abusive. There's no need for that. When the
right,
whole time they could just, calmly let you talk and help you through whatever you're going through. And oh my gosh, handcuffed and treated this way.
right. And then continually being treated like you're crazy and only giving certain time limits to. I remember in this particular instance, I did end up calling my perpetrators instead of my children's father, which then initiated more problems for myself. Because at that point I had been out of contact with them for almost a year. But for whatever reason, being in the psychiatric treatment, I contacted them instead of my children's father, which then again perpetuated the abuse on that end.
Yeah.
Do you think all of the things that were being done to you triggered part of you to like contact your abuser because of whatever reasons? Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
like do you remember like what you were
Well,
thinking right before you
I don't
contacted them?
remember. I don't remember what I was thinking, but I do. But again, then this is when they opened up a new DCFS case. So my prior visit, and in the last few weeks, I remembered that the perpetrator said, "Well, they open up a DCFS case anytime a mother is hospitalized in a psychiatric treatment center." I don't know if that's true or not. But
That makes
again,
sense.
this perpetrator did work for DCFS also,
Gosh.
Oh no.
and was the abuser to one of my children in our previous case, but they couldn't uh, verify who or what, who was the perpetrator, but they had accused my children's father of being the perpetrator on that one. But they had closed the case because they couldn't do the timing of it all. So again, I think then in contacting them, it opened up a new DCFS case. But because the police were called and one of my children was with me, I think that's why. I'm pretty sure that's why they opened up the case, because he was with me at the time of the incident, and um, sorry if I get scattered, but well, I'm sure that's why they opened it up. I think contacting my perpetrator, and because he had connections within it, kind of amplified the discussion, because when I was I went and I was in that facility for 2 weeks, or let's see, actually I think it was 20 days, because I think it was 20 days. And again, like you said, if Medicaid is paying for it, if you don't have insurance, hospitals will apply for Medicaid so that they can, and we qualified for it at the time. So
Yeah.
Medicaid paid for it, and they do it with, they have you sign the paperwork even though you're in a psychiatric treatment. So they double bind you, right? How do you sign for Medicaid and authorize that you're applying for Medicaid, but you're not mentally stable enough to be out in the world? So it's this tricky little loophole, I guess, that they
You're
use.
being coerced to so that they can get the money that they're wanting. And
Right.
with the opening up the DCFS case, after you called perpetrator, like
Mm-hmm.
what else happened that made it worse on your end as far as like in that facility? Did things get worse for you?
Um, they did, because calling the abuser then opened up a lot of the religious abuse that came with it. So then it started, it enhanced, and again, this abuser also used hypnosis on me, so was able to very calmly help me and listen to me. Um, so that again then just perpetuated the situation of not being able to get the help that I needed, because again, like Cindy said, you need someone who genuinely cares, who can help you sort through
Mhm.
what is what. And in the hospital, they don't do that.
Yep.
They're not.
Every survivor needs someone that they can talk to and call in these situations, whether it be a friend, a counselor they trust, or,
Right.
some kind of help, because they're really sneaky.
Yes.
I've spoken to nurses and the social workers. They really know how to finagle the situation. And even though we were on the call with them, speaking to them that this is something she goes into regularly because of the season, and that we know how to deal with this, uh, they weren't going to listen to what we said because we're like,
No.
please release her tonight. I said, we will come pick her up, or we'll send for an Uber to take her to get her back home. And then they accused her of lying to them,
Mm-hmm.
because it was, the verbiage I used to explain what, the survivor and I were talking about was a little bit different than the way she was saying. So they automatically accused her of lying. But I'm like, wait a second, that's not what I said. Because the survivor called me and she was upset because no, they're not going to let me go because you said this. And I said, well, wait a second, that's not what I said. And so we got into that kind of mess. And we we were actually like, what can we do? We can't do anymore. I had to tell her, wait the 3 days. They have to release you in 3 days. We'll come get you if you need us to. It just so happens that she did have a really good friend that she could call to come pick her up and take her home safely. They knew we were keeping an eye out on her. They knew we were watching, so they were very kind to her.
Mm-hmm.
And they did move her over to a psych ward from the emergency room to the psych ward, but they only kept her for a half a day, just really overnight to about noon.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decided to let her go. And
Mm-hmm.
we came up with a safety plan with the social worker that she felt confident that was going to work. A lot of it too depends on the past with the survivor. Like if you've been in
Right.
multiple psych wards before, the hospital is going to use that against you. And
Mm-hmm.
they're going to find out
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So you might as well tell them the truth. Yes, I've been
Yes.
to a psych ward before. They already know your background. But the whole point is to remain calm if
Yes.
possible, peaceful and calm, no matter what they tell you, what they say to you, just be cool as a clam. I know that can be so hard when you're in psychosis. Oh my gosh, I've been there. But that's really your saving grace. That is what's
It
going to get
is.
you out as soon as possible, that you're clear and calm. And then call the person that you need to for help. And then survivors need to know their rights. They need to know that in the state of Utah, and it's different state by state, but generally it's all the same, that you will be kept for 72 hours and then they must release you. Usually at that time, they will then white sheet you. And that's when a psychiatrist has to sign off on the white sheet to continue to keep you in that facility. But here's what survivors need to know. They have to have a court case opened as a result of white sheeting. They can't just white sheet you and keep you as long as they want. They have to actually, the hospital, the doctor has to go to court. They need to get a judge's approval to keep you longer. And if they don't, then they're breaking the law. And I suspect that's exactly what's been happening. They're keeping you longer for your Medicaid, even for your private insurance, for as long as
Yes.
they can, for 2 to 3 weeks, and then they'll let you go because they want as much money out of you as possible. So survivors need to know that, and they need to know their rights, and they can calmly tell who's ever there, their social worker, their nurse, look, I know that you have to be able to prove that you can keep me here, and I haven't given you any reason to keep me here because I've been calm, cool, and collective the entire time. In addition, they are going to give you drugs, and some of these
Mm-hmm.
drugs are black box. There's antipsychotics. You need to request, do not give me an antipsychotic. I don't want to be an antipsychotic. And if you're cool, calm, and collective, they won't have a reason to give you those black box drugs that is essentially a chemical lobotomy to your
Right.
front brain. So that's what survivors need to do. Call us. We'll help you out the best we can, or
Yes.
email us. Probably emailing is the best way because it goes direct to me. So that's at info@relentlesshopeforyou.org. I'll get it. I'll get in touch with you. The other thing you'll want to do so that people can come and visit you and check on you and make sure you're okay in those psych wards is you have to have their name on a roster that gives permission for your friend to come see you, or they're not going to let anyone have access to you. And so you want to make sure that you have a couple of friends on your roster who you trust that can come visit you and see, put eyes on what exactly is happening to you. I am
Well, and a lot of
horrified.
times too, Cindy, they give you a code to give to your friend. So usually you have a code also, and you make sure that your friend has that code.
Yeah,
So make sure you keep track of that because they will not give it to you and they will not give it to anyone who calls. Sorry.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you for bringing that up.
I encourage all survivors to have a safety crisis plan and a
Yes.
mental health directive. Uh,
Mhm.
when you're in a calm state of mind, not in a time of year that's hard for you to put this together. And I'll make sure that I have those forms that you can fill out I'll give them to Cindy to make sure that she has them to give. So whenever you want to do that, you can just get on the Relentless Hope uh, website, because then you can put down your wishes, just kind of like if you're going to have a medical directive, and
Mhm.
you put your counselor's name on there, all the names and numbers, phone numbers of every single person that you have as a support person, so that you keep a copy of it, because once they take your phone when you go into these psych wards, which they do, they'll say
Mm-hmm.
it's for your best interest or whatever,
Mhm.
and then you don't have your people that you can contact. So I'm very much encourage you to have these things ahead of time. Then you can say on there, like, do not give me these medications, and this is the safety plan that I have, that I use and will use once I get out of here. And you have a right to a hearing, so that if you are whitelisted and then kept longer, they have to let you talk to a social worker and be able to plan when you're going to get out of there, because all of these things that they do to you is try to get your thinking mind offline so that you can't think. Just like Susie was talking about the hypnosis that was used on her. This is a very common thing, that then when somebody's being, she's talking to somebody on the phone and they're calmly saying these phrases that are activating her parts, or parts of her that are then supposed to, like, be quiet, don't speak up, don't do these things for yourself, because they want survivors to be helpless. They want
Mhm.
parts activated that feel helpless and are more like children or feel like I can't do anything here because, and then when you try to explain what's really happening, like, well, these words are triggering me and what you're doing is triggering me, and that's why I'm feeling worse and I can't think. You can't even think at that point to tell them what's really going on. So I also encourage you to write down all the code words that you know of, not
Yes.
for them, but for someone to see, well, this is what they keep saying, and this is why, I'm feeling worse instead of
Hmm.
better.
Yeah,
So there's a
absolutely.
lot that you can do.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that too. Thank you for bringing it up, Sherry, because I don't know your code words. I don't know your trigger words. Me or a friend of yours or a relative you trust needs to know what those codes are so they can say to the nurse, stop saying these words. This is triggering. Or say to the social worker, stop it. But if they know, like when I called the hospital and inquired about this particular survivor, I guess maybe I had a little more leeway, or I think they took me more seriously because I called in and I said I'm her caseworker. That that scares them. If you
Yeah.
say I am her caseworker, then and I don't want you to lie if you're not a caseworker, but if you get a caseworker to step in and advocate for them, they will treat her with a lot more respect.
And if you
Um,
just use the word advocate, I'm her advocate.
it's interesting. Advocate doesn't hasn't worked for me as much in the past. When
No.
they hear the word caseworker, that's when they get nervous. So that is and I'm telling you, after they knew that I was keeping an eye on her and that I was threatening to come see her, they were much more accommodating. So yeah, that's just some helpful advice.
Right. And that was one thing that was hard about this time is with COVID, they would not let visitors in.
You're
Oh,
right.
yes.
So I mean, I
Oh.
was able to do all this stuff by phone. I didn't actually have to go in. So
Hmm.
things are have changed since COVID, right? Because I know people
Yeah.
can't come in. They're a little more accommodating and be able to just have a conversation with you off the phone. But I think the fact that we threatened to actually come in, even if we couldn't,
Right.
I did mention the word lawyer, and that helps too.
Yes, it
So,
does.
but you have to have a lawyer to back you up, and
Mhm.
in case you do have to get kind of mean with them.
Proceed. Yes.
So you have to be able to back up your words.
Right.
So that helps
And
too.
everyone has the right to have a social worker in any hospital or facility, and
Yep.
they can help you to find a lawyer, somebody that can advocate for you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So caseworker and lawyer are two words
Or
that
yes.
Yeah.
Two
Um,
very helpful words.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was trained to be a caseworker, and I am a certified victim advocate. So I have the credentials to back that.
Mhm.
So, like I said, you can't just throw out words unless you're able to back it up. So, in that case, your friend might need to find a counselor that can step in. Your friend might need to contact someone else who has the credentials to speak on behalf because they will know if you're not using the right verbiage. They'll know that you're making things up.
Right.
So, Goel, my husband, got on the phone with one of them the other night, and because he does have his law degree, he was able to speak to them and say, "Look, you got 72 hours. If you don't let her go, we're coming after her." And I think that's what they're like, oh, okay, they're serious. And you're right, the social worker was much more kind and amenable after that. And but even though, like I said, they still kept her overnight, even though we asked them to release her, and they have that right. So sometimes even we can't help at times. So then, we would need to consult with a lawyer to find out what the next steps are. But yeah,
Well, and like you said, Cindy, sleeping it off is the best. If you can just even go in, lay in the bed, close your
yes,
eyes, and meditate, or, most of those psychiatric medicines make you sleepy anyway. So
right,
if
yeah,
you just relax into it and go to sleep and get a good night's rest, and then wake up,
absolutely.
you have more faculties to.
Yes. Yes, it's so important. I know survivors have so
Mm-hmm.
much trouble sleeping because of their nightmares and flashbacks and their heightened anxiety. I totally get that. I'll tell you what I did for myself because I went into psychosis a few years ago. I did get medication. Now, I've never been forcibly drugged, so I don't know if this is going to work for a survivor, but I did go to a doctor. I told them I need sleep. I knew I needed sleep because I had been up for days. And when you don't have sleep, your mental capacity goes out the window. Your ability to
It
reason
does.
and to understand what's going on and to deal with you're dealing with goes out the window because of lack of sleep. So the doctor
Right.
did give me trazodone. Now, trazodone is a SSRI. It's not an antipsychotic. It's very safe. I've taken it for years to help me sleep at night. You're going to be okay with something as simple as trazodone, and it does the job.
Right.
In the times that it doesn't do the job, then I take a Xanax, and that'll usually do the trick. So there are safe medications that have been used well and properly and will provide you relief. And so
Yes.
I know a lot of people are like, I don't want to ever take any kind of drug. In these kind of situations, it's kind of an emergency. It's more
Yeah.
important that you get sleep. And so you need to make an exception in these situations. So I just wanted to point that out because a lot of survivors said, no, I will not take any medication at all. I'm like, but you need it so bad. So anyway, I just wanted to put that in there. Go ahead.
Sleep is so
Yeah.
important
It is.
because when you don't have enough sleep, that's what ended. That's how I ended up being in the psych ward last time, about 4 years ago,
Mhm.
was lack of sleep, and my mind was not making sense, and our mind is not meant to go without sleep,
Right.
and if we can get something like what Cindy said, like trazodone before we get into trouble,
Yeah.
before we end up in a psych ward, it's worth it. So, Susie, here you're in there for 2 weeks and twenty days total, right?
Wow.
Mhm.
And you've had these horrible things happen to you, and
Mhm.
all which are horribly triggery. And then you end up calling your perpetrator, and then the religious stuff comes up, and y- they're calmly using phrases that are, what is this doing to you then? Like, um, you're being drugged, you're being, held down, all
Mhm.
these awful things. How did you end up ever getting out of there, too, for one thing?
Well, so again, that time, you know, I'm guessing, for me, with each time it was like, well, you're almost there. We see that you're almost there. And I do go back to the what Cindy was saying is, they're
That's
just waiting out the time
the
until
yeah.
Medicaid will stop
Yeah.
paying. You're
Uh-huh.
so close. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see how tomorrow goes. And that perpetuated for at, at least a week. But then I would get upset that they weren't letting me go, and so they're like, "See, you're not ready yet." And I was like, "Well, I've been here for such amount of days," and I can tell them, "I've been here for 13 days already. I'm cognitively aware that I've been there for that long, but now because I'm angry that I'm still there." Well, you're not in your right mind if you're angry about being here. We're just trying to help you.
Oh my
Right.
gosh. I'm so
You're just
sorry.
trying to help.
Yeah.
For some reason, they don't want you to feel any emotions or to have any PTSD triggers. And they look at that as if you're being a combative patient. They really do.
Right.
And
Well,
anything that they can use to, like, oh, see, this is why she's not ready.
right.
She's
And
feeling.
because I was combative and because of the incident that happened when I was in psychosis, you know, they would trigger violent things, which I've never been a violent person in my life. And all of a sudden, just this anger. And so, yes, so that's why they held me down and things like that, which then made it worse, right? Because
Yes.
aggression doesn't help when you're not even acting on the volatility, but feeling when that emotion is so high. When somebody gets aggressive, then it makes it worse. It perpetuates it versus taking a step back and saying, okay,
Yeah.
what can we do here? Because this person is agitated. Obviously, so I don't, so for me, that in that instance, even just getting frustrated about not being released that day
Yeah.
when they said the day before, then it was like, oh, see, you still haven't learned to manage that emotion. So let's put you back into, now you have to do another anger management class or manage your emotions, or you know these classes or that they have when you are in the psychiatric facility are not helpful. I mean, you're reading, it's worksheets and different things like that when you actually need a real person to talk to one on one. It doesn't help having a group, but this is where they make money, right?
Mhm.
You have a group of 12 people sitting around in this group with one professional, and Medicaid's paying. I
Mhm.
mean, when we get later on, I'll tell you some really fun facts. But, you know, this one class, they can charge probably
Yes.
150 to 175 per person
Oh my gosh,
times
you're
12
absolutely
or
Yeah.
45
right.
minutes.
That happened to Goel. Goel went to the hospital for his shingles and they kept him overnight, which we don't know why. Um, and they had a person come in to talk. He's like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm this and this person. I just want to share with you some information." And we're like, "Okay." Come to find out, that person charged us $2,000 for his time. He was in the hospital room for 15 minutes. We didn't
Yep.
know we were being charged for this, and we have private insurance. And what he told us was completely useless. Uh,
Right.
they, they didn't ask us permission. We didn't know we were being charged for it until we got the bill. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. They're going to pull in a whole team of people that they can charge for. Again, I think that's another form of fraud as
Yes.
Yeah,
well.
fraud. Exploitation of
Yeah.
survivors who need someone to talk to, and calling it a class
Yeah.
and labeling as such does not make it something beneficial.
Right. Well, and they're
Yes,
covering their butts in case you do come back and want to sue them, that
correct.
they've covered all their bases. And well, we gave her this, we gave her that, we did everything we could. She's just being unreasonable and blah 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 blah. And
Or she refused to go to class and it's like, well, it wasn't helpful, so why would I go sit
yeah,
in?
why would yeah. And again, covering their butts
Yep,
legally.
yep.
Can I ask, Susie, what did the class even consist of when you did go?
Well, they had different ones. So they had
Oh,
what they would label as art therapy, right? So charge an art therapist to come in and literally color a printed off coloring sheet
Oh
and
my
call it art
goodness.
therapy.
I just
Uh,
wanted an example.
Oh,
one classroom I
gotcha.
remember going and sitting in, and the person had a workbook, and it was a fill in the blank with ABC. If you're feeling this emotion, what do you do? A, B, C, or D? Circle the right answer. I mean, total asinine things for adults.
Yeah.
When you're not,
Overcharging
yes,
for stuff like
yes,
that. It's like, okay, that should cost $10 at most, but they're going to
right.
charge like 250.
They're charging $10 for the piece of paper itself, and then $12 for the
Yeah.
pen to write with, and yeah, it's itemizing it all out, right, to make sure that
Well, then it just
it's all
looks
covered.
good on paper.
Yeah.
Right.
They did everything they could before they released you.
He did. So it's not on.
Yeah. So it's not on them. They did, you know what they did to my dad? He died in 2021. Um, he had cancer at the time, but it was well under control until they gave him the vaccine. That's all I'm going to say. And he went into a deep dive shortly after the vaccine. They took him to the emergency room. He had COVID 2 months prior, but when I started talking to the doctor, she says, "Well, he has COVID," and I'm like, "No, he doesn't."
Yeah.
I said he had COVID 2 months ago, but he's over it. Oh, well, he has long-term COVID. And of course, when he died in the hospital, they said he had COVID. They put that as one of its death reasons for death. And so I learned that because they did that, they got $38,000 from the
Yes.
government.
Yeah.
So
I'm so
they're just
sorry, Cindy.
it's well, he
I
was he
know
was
of a lot of
old. I
people.
mean, he was 85. It was time for him to go anyway, but um yeah, they just used that as an excuse so they could get their money.
Yes. They get
And
that
that's
kickback.
yeah, they get that kickback. And of course, he didn't ask for the vaccine. It was forced upon him because he was in a nursing home at the time. They didn't check with the
Yes.
family. They just shot him up. And by the time he had his second round of the COVID vaccine, he went into sepsis. He had a heart attack in short order, and he died a week later. So
Mm,
that's their game. That's
yeah.
their game.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
What else do you have for us, Susie? We're learning so much
Okay.
here.
Well, to go off your COVID, yes, my brother actually passed away in 2021 or 2020, and uh, he had multiple strokes, was on kidney dialysis, all sorts of things, and they said he had COVID also. So they said, even though they took him off the ventilator because of He had 8 major strokes. They listed his death as COVID.
Yes.
So same as
Yeah,
your
it's tragic. I know several people that had brainstem strokes right after having the COVID vaccine, and a friend that went to a nursing home and they forced him to have a vaccine, and
Mm-hmm.
he died that same week.
Yep.
Um, but then they listed as having COVID.
yeah. Yeah, again, because the government would pay for any extra money for anyone who died of COVID.
Mhm.
Fortunately for people like you, Susie, it validates the fact that this is a very real thing that happens, that
Right.
the places are doing fraudulent things for money in
Right.
psych wards, in hospitals, and nursing homes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then moving on, I was released from that facility still having um, not psychosis, but mental health problems because of the isolation, because the only person in contact with was still the perpetrator of my children. And it's one thing to have be triggered by your own abuser, but as a mom and having doing everything in my power to keep the perpetrator of my children away from them was a struggle and was a fight. And on all sorts of levels, I never left my children again with that person. And even at that point, they were confused at why there was some of them were confused why we even had interaction with that person,
Yeah.
and they stayed away. So at least there was that, but even the stress of having that person around once in a while was difficult. uh, then I had another incident where um, we had taken a staycation because at that point we needed a break, and so we thought, okay, well, we'll just go out of town, still in the state. And I then had an episode, and I'm not even sure what it was, but I had an episode and I was confused and taken back up to, and and I wasn't sure what my name was or anything like that. And the police were called again because I was wandering around the lobby. And because then, since the police showed up, it triggered. And this was only, a, a month, 6 weeks after the other incident where I had just been traumatized and handcuffed to the gurney and whatnot. I then was handcuffed again and taken to the hospital. And this time I remember it was like straight out of a movie where it seemed like they had put me in an ambulance bay with a where you have the truck, um sorry, like with a UPS truck, how the back truck is just like a garage door or whatever. It was like there was a garage door, there was a officer outside, and they started questioning me. And again, at that point, I didn't have any identification on me, and I finally had remembered, and then they had contacted um, my children's father, and they said, should we take her to jail or should we take her to the hospital? And he said, well, obviously take her to the hospital. And so they did that. So then I was there again, admitted to now my fourth psychiatric hospitalization. And this time it was even, this time it was in Davis County. It wasn't Ogden, but it was in Davis County. And I was again there for another 14 to 18 days. And they again were like, well, you're almost there. So, and that time they did do a mental health court. I remember being on the phone and they said, take your medication and we'll release you. And then I was released maybe a week later. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Did you talk to a judge or a lawyer in this?
Well, it was just on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't really recall it too much because I was in the psych ward and they were medicating me. And so remembering what I was agreeing to, even now cognitively in intellectually in a fine state of mind, I can't remember what I agreed to. I don't
Yeah.
have memory of that.
Yeah.
Other than I do recall there was a lawyer that talked to me on the phone beforehand. We then got on a conference call, and then after that they said take your medication and you'll be fine.
That is interesting. I'm glad you told me about that.
And
Just do
that,
it by phone.
well, yeah, and because I will say this because I apparently spit on one of the officers, so propelling a substance. And so it was not a mental health court. Well, within the court system, they have a mental health court criminally, and then they also have just a regular criminal. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that, but they have certain judges who specifically do criminal charges regarding mental health, people who are mentally unwell when they commit the crime versus someone who is a criminal who is deemed mentally healthy.
Yeah.
So there was that. Now, after I got released from that, we were in full blown, we definitely have to leave the state of Utah. So we packed up and we said, we're going to trust in God and He's going to lead us where to go. And at this point, we had cut off all communication with all of my perpetrators. And then we were cutting ties with the perpetrator of my children. And this is where it gets dicey because when we left the state, I had no idea that there was any charges or anything from the incident. So there was the incident where I went to court and they told me to take the drugs in Davis County. The other incident that I was in Salt Lake County, apparently they were building a case against me. And what had happened was we left in October, and this had happened 3 months prior. And then at the end of October, a warrant was sent out for my arrest. for this incident several months earlier, when the police had never contacted me before or anything like that, but we had already left the state of Utah at the beginning of October.
Okay.
Now, this was the time where there was a very, very high profile case of parents who had their children were missing. It was a worldwide story. I won't mention their names and my perpetrators contacted the police and said that me and my children's father were just like this couple, and we were going to take the lives of our children.
So they made it look like you and your child's father were going to take the lives of your own children.
Yes. And so then, of course, it made it even worse. So the warrant had been placed, apparently, again, weeks after. But then when they had contacted my perpetrators then exaggerated it and said, yes, and they're going to take their lives. They're a danger. They're a very high, very dangerous. And this was at the time when my brother was on life support, and then my perpetrators contacted me to say, if you want to say goodbye, we're going to do a Zoom. And on the Zoom, I just said, there's so many people suffering with everything that's going on. Please, when you get to heaven, beg Christ to come back and just, so that we can start the healing. And because I said that was the indicator that I was going to then take the lives of my children and send them to heaven.
So we got two morals of the story, right?
Yeah.
Don't spit at a police officer if you're at a psych ward. Don't lay hands on them. Don't do anything that they can get you for criminal charges. Because, now they've sealed your records, so nobody can obtain them and find out really what happened.
Well, so and they're two different incidences, but yes, they're sealed records. They didn't even give me my full discovery. So we'll fast forward because they ended up arresting me, finding me.
For spitting on an officer.
No, well, this was a different. Oh,
that's right. That was a different.
It's a different
scenario.
charge. I don't want to talk about the other charge.
Yeah, no, that's
still,
fine.
But yeah, but so this other charge was exaggerated, let's say, and which is what I have noticed that has happened to many other people. So they overcharge people with charges in order to then reduce them to a plea deal to cut out the court case or the trials and things like that, so they can have a win. But because of the circumstances with my perpetrators not only previously being in law enforcement and DCFS, they had really created a fantastic story of how dangerous we were. So no one knew where we were, and they found us. And instead of any of these people that I had talked to with when my brother had died, instead of any of them telling us, hey, by the way, the police are looking for you, you should probably turn yourself in. They conspired to try to find out where we were at, give our identifications so that we could be arrested instead of turning ourselves in. So I had no idea that I had a warrant out for my arrest until the U.S. Marshals showed up.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
I was
The
a
U.S.
fugitive of
Marshal.
justice. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So the U.S. Marshals show up, pull guns on my children, on one of my children, my youngest child.
Oh my.
And then can't handcuff me. And as I'm going back to where the rest of my children are and my children's father, I see my children's father's face being stepped on by other U.S. Marshals, ground into the ground, and he's handcuffed and his ankles are shackled.
Wow. That's severe.
Yeah.
And they're doing all this in front of your children
Yes.
and to them.
Yeah. Well, they send social services to talk to my children and tell them everything's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. We're going to, we're just getting this all figured out. Of course, there's no weapons. There's no indication that we're going to injure our child. They interview our children and they're like, no, our parents are not going to injure us by any means. So I was taken to jail and was not able to contact. I had my one phone call that I was trying to contact my children's father, and I wasn't able. They had detained him for 12 hours. And what had happened was, so then they took our children away and put them in foster care in the state that we were in, and the state of Utah was pressing very hard to get our children back into custody of the state of Utah. So now this becomes not only a criminal case for me, but now a super intense DCFS case. And we ended up going to court 3 days after my arrest, and the magistrate in the state that we were in told my kid's dad to get a job and he could have the kids. And he could stay in that state while we sorted through my criminal charges and whatnot. Unfortunately, because we were not able to contact one another because of, I'll just say there was even higher security service that came to the court, to the jail where I was placed.
Are you saying there's people higher up that got involved?
Yeah, higher than the U.S. Marshals that got involved.
Oh,
okay.
And we were not able to communicate. So I was not in communication with my children's father on what we were going to do. Even when we went to court, they said we couldn't talk to each other, we couldn't look at each other, we couldn't do anything. So we did not communicate for 3 weeks almost. And until finally some of the girls in the jail helped me figure out the system on how I could contact him.
So what was that? What is this?
So they had these little tablets that you could pay money and do electronic email. So you would send a message, and it was basically from the jail to the person's email, and then they would have a certain amount of words that they could type back. And each email or message costs 50 cents.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm aware of that. I've had to use that before.
Yeah.
And if they don't want your recipient to get the message, they just simply won't get it.
Right. Because it's
Oh.
free.
So,
Exactly.
so I guess the moral of this story is ask for a lawyer right up front.
Right.
Yeah. And you don't need to talk to them. You don't have to say anything to them. You can say, I want my lawyer. I want my lawyer. And they have to stop.
Yeah.
And
then, and unfortunately, I didn't talk to them. I didn't say anything to them, but I didn't ask for a lawyer either.
yeah.
And so they will make you wait until they get what they need in order
Mhm.
to give you your lawyer if you don't ask for a lawyer. So that's, like you said, the first thing you do is you ask for your lawyer, because they don't read Miranda rights anymore because they don't have to. So they will read you your Miranda rights if you tell them that you want your Miranda rights read.
Yeah.
But
Not many people
if
know
you're
that,
only
though.
being detained,
Yeah.
because if you're only being detained, they don't read your Miranda rights. So if you're being detained and you ask for your Miranda rights, and I don't know the legal part of this, you'd have to ask Goel, but I think if you do ask for them to read your Miranda rights, then they might have to at least unhandcuff you. But I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware that they didn't have to. That was law. I guess it
No,
was a
it's
change
not.
recent.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Miranda
been
rights. Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to write this down so I can talk to Goel about this.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's different as far as like with the U.S. Marshals or local police, or how that goes as far as the Miranda rights go. I do know, though, that at least I was told by the U.S. Marshal as I was being transported to the jail that he didn't have to read me my Miranda rights.
Okay.
So,
We'll find out about that.
yeah. So then
Seems
this is
like
where.
a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Ask your question. Seems like a lot of what?
I was just gonna say, I was thinking out loud, really. It seems like a lot of survivors have criminal charges added to their long repertoire of horrible things that happen to them. And then even if the charges are from, like way in the past, it's like if the Child Protective Services gets involved at all and there's a case against them, which it seems like they target the children to take them away from the survivor somehow. And, they'll bring anything from the past into the present as if that's the way it is now.
Exactly.
Were your children safe while they were in foster care?
No.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's the other thing I've heard is they will put them in pedophile families.
Yes. So one of my children was actually in the state where I was arrested, was sexually abused by another foster child in that same home.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I will say the state of Utah spent millions of dollars getting our children back to the state of Utah in order to prosecute us and take them away and get them into the state's custody, which was a battle that we battled for over 2 years because they kept extending and extending. And I'll just leave my criminal stuff to the fact, well, so let's go to the criminal stuff, and then I'd like to emphasize and go through the DCFS stuff, because that to me is more important than my criminal stuff in a sense. But
Before we move on, you can answer this.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to tell you that earlier I had to go because I was having a coughing attack. So if I get off camera, that's what I'm doing, is just taking care of that. But the millions of dollars that was spent, does that have a connection to the LDS Church? And like I said, you don't have to answer that.
I don't have proof of that. But because the state is run the way it is, and I dare say there's not a separation of church and state in the state of Utah.
Correct.
Yes, because of the profile of let me just say, the positions of people who my children are related to, prior positions of people, I wouldn't doubt it's not hard to make connections, connect the dots, I'll say.
Yeah. So what kind of lawyer did you have? I'm assuming that you had a state court-appointed lawyer?
Yeah, I did.
Were they any good?
Oh, no.
No, you're right. That's just it. That happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, in fact, my court-appointed lawyer, first time I talked to them, said, "Oh, I already read about your case in the newspaper before you even got here."
Oh my gosh.
Okay. You can ask for another attorney. So we learned this as well. Yeah. But it's up to the judge if you get to switch.
I know, but the judge didn't even make a decision. My attorney did. He said nobody else in our office will take your case.
Yep. So in that case, if that's what's going on, once again, we'll get on our podcast and we will embarrass the heck out of that lawyer, which is what we did in another case. 6 months ago, there was a woman with criminal charges. Her name's Mandy. It's in the newspapers as well. So, but anyway, Mandy is sitting in jail for over a year, denied rights. They were mistreating her in the jail cell. We found out she had a court-appointed attorney because she's broke, of course. And the attorney was lousy, absolutely lousy. So what we did is we got on our podcast and we just broadcasted this attorney and it said how terrible she was. She wasn't following protocol. She wasn't doing anything to help the survivor. Because that went out, people started calling, demanding that she get a new lawyer. And she did. She got a new lawyer within a couple of weeks. It was really quick because the pedophiles, they don't like getting bad press. So if that happens to any survivor, give us a call. We'll start screaming, yelling, getting it out there, and then you will get a better lawyer. or at least a new lawyer. But yeah, so ridiculous. They got everything stacked
Yes,
against you. Everything.
Hmm.
they do.
Yeah.
So,
So,
I
yeah.
went through that with the custody battle. Like the lawyer that I had for my divorce case was not doing anything for me. And then I hired another lawyer to be there for my children and advocate for them.
mhm,
And then he was the same way. And so here I was paying two lawyers, but I knew that it was rigged. I knew.
yeah,
Um, I figured that out.
Hmm.
There's people that are appointed in those specific places, and when you're in it, you don't know what to do, though.
yeah,
Well, especially when every avenue that you go down, um, you don't get any help because when I was finally extradited back to the state of Utah, um, my children's father contacted my attorney and said, "Hey, can we sit down and talk? I've got some information." And my lawyer wouldn't ever talk to him. He wouldn't talk to me. I, you can, there's a special line in jail that you can call where they don't record your call to your attorney. He would never pick up. I talked to him maybe a handful of times because he just kept saying, "Oh, it's okay." Mind you, at the same time, we had an active case against us in through DCFS in the family courts in the juvenile court, and they were trying to use my criminal case against me in the juvenile case. And so I had to finagle all of this while still having zero support other than my
yeah,
children's father. Now, so when my kids get back to the state of Utah, they're thrown in with my perpetrators. So my perpetrators are the ones that take them in.
mhm,
So now I'm really concerned because now they're with my perpetrators and who knows what they're going to do to my kids.
yeah, yeah,
While simultaneously, I have zero contact with anyone in um, my juvenile case. No one contacted me while I was in jail about my kids. So I had a lawyer, but they never contacted me. The DCFS caseworker, one of the DCFS caseworkers sent me her card and said, contact me. I contacted her and she never responded. Come to find out, um, because she was removed from the case because she was actually trying to help us.
yes, yes,
So while the father of my kids is out of jail fighting against all of these people to get our kids back, not being told how to get them back, or anything about the system, even through his attorney. Now they listed probably, I think in the petition against us, they had 25 items that they were saying that we were doing against our kids to get our kids taken away from us. The
Wow.
only valid, the single valid thing that they had legally to keep our kids from us was we did not sign the homeschool affidavit when our children were home from school because of COVID.
That was what the valid
wow.
thing they used.
Yes.
Wow, they were really grasping at
They were
straws.
desperate, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the other crazy stuff that they charged you with?
with her kids.
Well, yeah, which is why they held your
So the
kids
main
from you.
so the main thing was for our disabled son, medical abuse and neglect. Now, mind you, we have had the same pediatrician for him from before he was even born. So I went and picked out the pediatrician when and when our oldest were born, they were in the NICU. That pediatrician came weekly to the NICU to make sure that he was, and we would have an appointment, talk about both of our kids. And so he knew their medical history from birth, like actively coming to the NICU, doing exams and stuff like that. That's how proactive I was with that.
Good. Smart.
So
Very smart.
so in that case, well, so if I can jump back to my criminal stuff. So because I was so concerned about my kids and not being able to, and them holding my kids against their dad, and that they being in my abuser's home, I was freaking out, and I'm trying to do whatever I can to get out. Right now, I was held without bond, and they upcharged me, right,
Yep.
to say that I was a danger. Everything that they can do to keep me away from the kids so that they can take them away.
Mm-hmm.
And then make their father just put him through the ringer because, well, he's the dad. He can't take care of them.
Yeah. Right.
So, sitting in jail for 7 months. Finally, I had no preliminary hearing. I had no. I never even signed for my lawyer to be my lawyer. So once they speak up for you, that automatically says that they're your lawyer. And so even going back in reviewing, you can pay to get your court case file. There's a thing called exchange. You can pay to get the records.
Yep.
I've done that. My entire discovery that I received after I was sentenced was only a police report. Everything else in my discovery was sealed.
Sorry, I'm just writing all this down.
Yeah.
I was taking some notes too. I was thinking, how can they get away with not even
Excuse me.
posting like bail?
The judge can do whatever they want.
He can. He can do whatever he wants in Utah. This sounds so familiar with the other case I was telling you about. They did the same thing to her, kept her for a year in jail, no bail. Yeah, they kept pushing the can down the road. They delayed hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So it just pushed out the time that she would be able to go in for a hearing and speak.
I never even had a what's the hearing that you have for just cause for them holding you?
That's a preliminary
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah. I didn't even have a preliminary at all
So, okay, so obviously you got out. How did you get out?
because I signed a plea deal.
You signed the plea deal. Yes. Of course. And that would be on your record for eternity, right?
Well, except for the fact that my plea deal, so they wouldn't send me to the mental health court, even though when this incident happened, I went straight to the psychiatric facility instead of jail. Now, if it was an actual crime, and the police officer there even told my children's father that it wasn't actually criminal, it was a mental health emergency.
Okay. Wow. I don't know if I have mentioned this before, but the Utah court systems are corrupt.
Yeah.
This case makes it extremely clear. Even in my husband's case, Goel, his court, he was not guilty of, what did they charge him with? Stalking. He simply wrote articles about the perpetrator, who had tons of public documents proving that he was a pedophile. Goel got a hold of those documents and wrote articles saying, this is who this guy is, him and his wife both. So he based his articles on public documents. Okay, first of all, stalking, you have to physically be in contact with the person.
Yes.
My husband never talked to them, never emailed them, never called them, never told people to contact them. He didn't come anywhere near them. And they just made up charges that he did, in fact, which is not true. And they violated his constitutional rights because he's considered a journalist. The judge dismissed that as well, still found him guilty. And we laugh about it now because we can. Before I was crying about this, but the judge just completely threw out the Constitution and decided to charge my husband with something he never did. And we just settled in court recently, because the perpetrator wanted this to all go away as well, because they're spending so much money on lawyers against not only Goel, but other people they falsely accused. And so we settled out of court. He did not have to go to jail. They wanted him to spend 60 days in jail. I can't imagine. And they were going to charge him thousands upon thousands of dollars in fees for something he didn't do. And
Right.
we were able to settle it for far, far less. And I told my husband, I'm like, I'm sorry, for the sake of our family, we need to settle, because he was willing to go. And I was like, no, I want this to be over. And so we settled. And so we do have to remove 5 articles from his Substack regarding this particular perpetrator, which I won't even mention because he's not worth it.
Right.
So, yeah, Utah courts, the Constitution's out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had never heard before of anyone being charged with stalking when they were talking about someone.
Yeah.
It's because they're having contact with someone, and it's like talking about someone is not stalking.
No,
Right.
it's not.
So yeah, I spent 4 months in jail without having a preliminary hearing in order to get me to sign a plea deal. So admit guilt, right? Under the pressure of knowing that my children are in an abuser's home, where I have zero access to see how they're doing, and also their father being dragged through the mud and being perpetrated on by my perpetrators because of what they're doing, not only to him and against him, but against our kids.
It had to
So
be
I
So
so,
am,
hard as a mom worrying about your children being in that
yeah, yeah.
situation, and here you are in jail.
yep, with no contact with them and how they're doing other than through their dad.
One
And
thing I know about you is that you are an incredible mom, and I can't imagine what that was like for you.
it it was it was brutal. I cried every day.
I bet.
Cried myself to sleep every night.
I bet.
And I mean, and jail, and this isn't even going into my experience of what jail was like, right? Um, and and because of the charges that I had, my time in jail was we were at where I signed a plea deal, so I'm in jail for 4 months. Finally, now mind you, my first interaction with my attorney was he said, I could probably get you a plea deal and get you out of here real quick. Then 4 months later comes to me with a plea deal. Plea deals are 4 months is quick. So if I admitted guilt to the charge, this higher charge, as soon as I was off probation and had my restitution paid, they would drop it to a misdemeanor. And then after so many years, it being a misdemeanor, it can have it expunged.
Okay.
Okay. So the plea agreement was I had to do a well, so they did a psychological evaluation, or no, they didn't even do a psychological evaluation because they wouldn't send it to mental health court. So they said, well, do a pre-sentence report where they come and do an interview about your criminal record, which is funny because my perpetrator used to do pre-sentence reports and I helped him with those when I was a teenager. Just a little side note. Anyway, so the the other thing with being in jail, when you are arrested, they have what's called pre-trial services. And what they will do is they will come and interview you and kind of see what kind of flight risk you are, different things to see if you can have um, bail or not. And mind you, I was being held on no bond, but my pretrial report was also sealed. So I can't even pay to get access to that.
Wow. Okay.
Sounds suspicious,
Yes.
So
unusual.
my discovery is sealed, which apparently in looking at the report into my case, my attorney did request it, but for whatever legal reasons, they said that it was suppressed and he couldn't have access to it either.
Mm.
So
Even the lawyer.
even the lawyer. Now, mind you, I mean, there was all sorts of things that happened as far as when they extradited me. They were going to fly me back, but something happened to one of the police officers' credentials, and they couldn't get back on the plane themselves. And they thought that somehow uh, my kid's dad stole it, even though he was in the state of Utah. He somehow had
What?
collaborated with somebody to find out where they were and stole this police's credentials. And so then we ended up driving back. I mean, it's all sorts of crazy movie like stuff.
Yeah, that totally sounds crazy.
And so, and now mind you, these are um, police officers that have engaged with my perpetrators, and who knows what
Yeah.
stories they
Yeah.
told
Yeah.
them. But apparently, they drew the
Think
conclusion that even though he was out of the state, he somehow stole her credentials the night before I was extradited, even though nobody knew when I was going to be extradited. So,
I was just doing a quick search, and it's like all of this is so suspect. It's like dealing things is not routine, and it usually means to protect evidence, witnesses, or law enforcement methods, um, or if disclosure could compromise the case. Just a list of things. But it just is like everything that you're saying is so suspect of um, just cover up and using everything to exploit the system that's set in place um, to work against you instead of help you.
right. So instead of flying back, we drove back. So I spent 3.5 days with these two officers, and um, it was, well, let's just say it was very interesting because the beginning of the trip, we got out of the jail. I was in handcuffs, and one of the officers was standing behind me. Huge guy. I'm talking like 6'5", 300 something pounds, standing behind me and said, I will let you sit in the front seat, but if you try anything at all, like to crash the car, to escape anything, I will shoot you in the back of the head. And I do not care about your kids or your husband.
Wow.
Wow.
So they had you drive back 3 days with two male police officers.
No, one was a male, one was a female.
One was a female. Did you spend the night at hotels or drive?
No, they booked me into different jails along the way as courtesy.
Interesting.
Yep,
Okay. Wow.
And they were driving?
they were driving. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I will
So
shoot
they
you in the
would.
back of the head.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
So I broke down into tears. Obviously, cried for the next like hour and a half, and it was interesting because the one they recorded the whole thing on their phones so that, of course, if I said anything about the case, they could use it against me. But they tried to. So then again, so we would drive, anywhere from about 7 to 8 hours. They would find a place wherever we had made it to, call the jail, and have a courtesy hold, is what they called it. Then they'd book me into jail, and I'd spend the night. And so I stayed in
did
three
you
different jails along the way.
did you ever have anyone to talk to? I'm thinking about you without the support and
No.
connection with people. And to have policemen, women, policewoman, and a policeman, say that, make that comment, like they don't care about you or your kids, and they'll do
Mhm.
that to you.
Yeah. Well,
It's like a hostage situation, in my like for a survivor.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, by the time we got to, gosh, see, now I'm thinking, was it 3 days or 4 days? I can't even remember if it was 3 or 4 nights. But one of the nights, it was either the second or the third night, and it wasn't the last night, but I ended up passing out when I got booked into jail because my blood pressure was so high because I was so stressed.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I passed out when I came to. That was actually the first time I had had any compassion from anyone in law enforcement because I had passed out and they were concerned like that I was okay. And mind you, I actually have low blood pressure. I rarely, so for me to have extremely high blood pressure in order to pass out, that's a great deal of stress for me. And so,
Yeah, with
but come
trauma
to find,
responses,
right?
you would have been in constant like fight or flight, probably.
Yeah. Oh,
So scared.
absolutely. Yep. And not being able to talk to anybody, contact. I mean, I had nobody.
So,
So we end up, and oh, sorry, were you going to ask a question?
Well, so they had you checked out by a doctor?
No,
No. So
no.
you passed out and you could have died.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
or and they didn't take you to a hospital.
They
Uh,
didn't take me to the hospital. They didn't even call the police officers that were extraditing me and let them know. They didn't find out I passed out until I told them the next morning.
oh, okay. Okay. Wow. They still should have had you checked over by a doctor.
Yes, I agree.
Well, just the person that was in the jail. It was, whatever they had
Hmm.
available, the medical staff that they have there.
Still, for all they knew, you were having medical issues that needed to be checked.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
So,
So after you told them and you had high blood pressure, the police officer just came, picked you up, and you continued on your journey?
yeah, yep,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
During your
They said,
traveling, how were you being treated? I mean, like, were you given breaks to use the restroom? Um, eat? I'm thinking of all the different needs that you would have had.
yeah, well, we would drive and stop for lunch. They were actually, it's funny because eventually by the end of the trip, the officers understood who I was, or sorry, who I am. And they said, man, if this was under different circumstances, this would have been a really fun road trip.
Yeah.
So even though they were actually ended up being very respectful. I think after they understood, well, I didn't talk to them very much. I didn't really talk about much to them, um, other than just kind of surface stuff, and we'd make jokes about things. Um, I was handcuffed, both my ankles and my wrists, the entire time I was in the car. So, so And they were kind enough at the end, the last night before we made it to Salt Lake. They came and picked me up and let me shower in one of the hotel rooms that they had rented so that I could actually have a shower. And the male police officer had bought me some brand new clothes to wear because, I'd been in the same pair of clothes that
Yeah.
hadn't been
Wow.
washed for over a month and stuff like that. So at at the end, I was treated respectfully.
That's good. They realized you weren't a threat. They were
Yeah,
probably told horrible lies about you and they believed it. And
right,
then they figured out, wait, this woman's kind. She's no threat.
right. And so, yeah, so they would get me lunch. They would get snacks if we needed, but um, and I think a couple of times we'd gotten snacks at the gas station when we stopped and whatnot. Um, so eventually, like I said, yeah, they were kind um, and respectful.
That's
And in
good.
fact, when they dropped me off at the Salt Lake County Jail, they were super respectful and kind, and um, tried to make
That's
sure that I would get treated kindly in the
that's good.
process.
That's good. We have about 25 minutes left. I was
Yeah.
wondering, how did you want to end?
Well, I think let's just so I signed the plea deal. The plea deal was to admit guilt, um, get treatment in a mental health treatment facility, and then as soon as I did that and I was on probation and paid off my restitution, they'd drop it to a misdemeanor and then to get it expunged. So I end up signing it. They send me to this mental health treatment center that is in itself is super corrupt, again with the Medicaid fraud and everything like that. But my in all of this is my fight to get my kids back. So finally, when I get into the treatment center, that's when I start being involved in the case with my children. And the first, and that's where I would like to go with this, is the DCFS case was ridiculously brutal. Because they had taken my disabled son to this special medical. So Primary Children's has a special division for children who have medical neglect and things like that. And they have this whole clinic. The head of that clinic became the doctor for my son. And she continued in 2.5 years to get us for medical neglect, especially for him, because we fought against getting the COVID vaccination for
Mhm.
him.
Yeah.
Um, we she threatened that all of these things were going to happen to him, and she knew his medical history so well. She was so versed on him, and she threatened that if he got COVID, that he would have to have a tracheotomy. And well, mind you, they're medicating his behaviors because he's not seen me in over a year or almost a year.
Mhm.
He's nonverbal. My perpetrator had actually abused him I'm pretty sure broke his back, but they deemed it scoliosis, which he never had while he was in our care. They tried to get us for malnutrition, but she didn't see him for 6 months. He was in foster care for 6 months, but they were trying to say that we had malnutritioned him. Um, he he kept getting sick while he was in foster care, and because I questioned the treatment, just because I asked if they would give him a different medication, she said we were being medically abusive because she was the doctor and she knew better. Mind you, when the judge asked about a certain condition, the only person in the courtroom that knew what the condition was myself.
Yeah.
And I explained it to the judge, and he said, "Who is this that's talking?" Because it was all online. And I said, "I'm the mother." And he took a big gulp and went, "Oh, okay." So we battled DCFS for, gosh, like I said, from end of 2020 to the end of 2023. They made their dad do 2 psych evaluations, 3 medication, like that he needed to be prescribed medication in order to be a good parent. They accused him of kidnapping in the juvenile court system, that he kidnapped some other child, even though there was never any criminal. And the story is wild because he wasn't even near the child. It was my kids that found this little 2-year-old that was running away from his dad to his mom. And they were observant enough to take this little 2-year-old kid that was running around in a school parking lot where cars are driving around, ran from the dad, was running to the mom, and the parents, you couldn't even see either parent. 2 of my children took this child to their mom, and DCFS turned that into my kid's dad trying to kidnap this child.
Mm.
Because he
You can't,
protested.
you can't make this stuff up. I
No.
mean,
our our disabled son was hospitalized during all of this, and they wouldn't allow both of us to go see him. So um, he said, "Well, you go see him." We were standing outside the hospital talking, and the caseworker drove up, and then in the next court case said that their dad was yelling and screaming outside the hospital and causing a fight with security, and had to be escorted out of the hospital because he was making such a scene when he didn't even enter the hospital whatsoever.
yeah.
So they fabricate all of these things. When the kidnapping charge came up and we confronted it, the guardian ad litem, who was the one that was accusing him of kidnapping, we addressed that. And mind you, we both went through multiple attorneys because
Yeah.
they wouldn't help us. They ended up relieving, because we called the ombudsman on DCFS. They removed that guardian ad litem, but replaced that guardian ad litem with her husband as the guardian ad litem.
Interesting.
Then again, continue on. Then at this point, we had 5 different caseworkers, and this next caseworker was continuing. This current caseworker continued to build up all of the stories about the lies. Finally, with the hospital lie and everything that happened with our son being hospitalized, because I went and I talked to the actual doctors that were treating him in the hospital, and I said, is it unreasonable that I'm asking for this medication versus this medication? And they said no. And I went to the judge and I said, Judge, because they had an emergency hearing, I said, Judge, this doctor does not agree with this other doctor. The doctor that's the head of the family, whatever it is, I can't remember, this supposedly protecting children, called again and started a new case with DCFS on us, or attempted to. So we're battling all of this. And finally, when they did the kidnapping charge, I finally spoke out to the judge and I said, Judge, what I would like you to understand is we have never agreed to allow the people that have our children in foster care, that are caring for our kids, we never agreed to allow them to take care of them. And I said, because they actually abused me. 30 minutes within saying that, our children were removed from those places and then stuck in to the actual foster care system, to the Christmas box house, and then went from there into a foster home. Now, we battled for 2 years. They kept extending it and extending it and extending it. And it wasn't until the judge retired and we got a new judge that we were able to get our kids back.
Yeah.
And my final attorney, when we finally got our kids back, said to the judge, I've been in this for 30 years and I've never seen parents comply to all of these things more than any, and other than no other parents have done this. And they have been through this for 3 years now. Two and a half, almost 3 years. And they've done everything. And they care about their kids. They know more about their kid. Like, these parents are not who they've been made out to be. And the judge said, well, we had our little judges meeting, and the only case in all of this judge's years that was, he asked about your guys' case and what was happening with it. And I just thought, you know, it's such, the whole thing is so corrupt.
Yeah.
It's so corrupt. And they will use everything to get against you. And I guess to end with all of this is they will go to such extremes to continue the abuse, discredit people to the max, put strain. I mean, in all of this, there were other things that had happened with law enforcement. They chased us down because now I have a record, and they look at my registration. We have a van full of people, and they handcuffed my 17-year-old. because somebody made a false claim on us.
Is there any way you can leave the state?
Um,
You have to stay in this state?
I am working on leaving the state. I because of I don't have my restitution completely paid off. I can't get my dropped to from the felony to the misdemeanor, which it's hard to get a job with a felony, even with the so-called felon-friendly businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult to get a job. So,
well, we're partnered with a ton of different facilities across the U.S. They provide free housing for those who are trying to escape sexual abuse, trafficking. You wouldn't have to work for 2 years because they're focused on helping you heal, get the counseling you need for the entire family, you and your kids. If you're interested in that, let me know. I understand because of the restitution you have to pay off, but after that's complete, if you want to get out of here, we can help you get out of here.
Oh yeah, we do. That's our ultimate goal.
Yeah.
We tried to do it back in 5 years ago, but we're really working on doing it now because yes. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that I was just
going
to say I'm glad you cut communication with your abuser.
Yes. I apologize. I had to go off camera for a little bit, and I missed a little bit of your what you shared, Susie. I kind of got stuck back. I'm still thinking there's something going on here that is just so psychologically wrong. I mean, with all of it. But when you're in a vehicle with 2 police officers, and before you even get started on the journey, they say what they said to you, what they will do, and how they don't even care about your children. That is psychological torture. And when they're saying, we don't care about what happens to your children, because this is what we're going to do to you if you try anything, that is terror conditioning to the max. It is illegal for police officers to say those types of things because they're threatening your death.
Yeah.
And you're the only thing that you're guilty of, as far as they know, is whatever you've been charged with.
Right.
And I just was
But I've only been charged with it. I haven't even gone through court or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just about me.
Exactly. It's like dehumanization at the max. Like as if you're disposable, so you're chased down, handcuffed. Your children are put through that and have to see all that. You're put through all of this psych ward stuff and just one thing on top of another, and then you don't even get the medical care that you needed when you passed out.
Right.
It's like being a hostage in a situation where you're literally, your life is not even being cared for, really. Yeah, they let you eat and they let you go to the bathroom and all that, but you're being treated less than human.
Right. And I did say that they did end up being respectful. They let me shower in the hotel shower, and they realized that I wasn't who they were told that I was. Yeah. But that's not really. I mean, it's a victory in a way, but it doesn't erase what happened.
Yeah, while
I'm
you
not
were
saying
gone,
that you,
Sherry, oh, I was going to say
yeah.
we got 7 minutes left. So
Oh, okay.
I had asked Susie what she would like to say to end the call. And so she had just told us the rest of her story. I wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions you wanted to do. And if you have any last minute comments, Susie, and then we can close out. We're coming upon 5 o'clock. So we've been at this for 3 hours.
Again.
Again. So
I
go ahead,
guess my
Sherry.
question is, you want to do a part three?
Um, I'd be happy to if you guys want to. If you guys want to come up with questions, now that I've shared the story, we can go into different things in depth of any questions about any part of it because when you said hostage, it was like, yeah. And Cindy had also said, asked if we wanted to leave the state. And I said, absolutely, that's what we're working on. And it, it feels like that the state of Utah as a whole, and I'm talking government, religion, um, you know, perpetrators, uh, are holding us hostage here with everything that has been done. And so the abuse does perpetuate. Um, yeah.
I guess then that kind of leads to what would you want to say to the survivors that are being held hostage in the state of Utah?
Um, we are, I mean, look at Cindy. She's, relentless hope, what relentless hope is doing. There are people out there trying to find you, trying to set up real help, real, um, actual physical help, which is what we need, right? And there's got to be a way that we can find small community to help one another and we if we can get to that mental state of, yes, pushing through the loneliness and pushing through feeling abandoned or feeling hostage, in like you said, being a hostage, breaking free of that binding, and finding God and letting him free your soul first without being bitter or resentful or hateful, and coming out with love and and yeah, pushing through with love.
I know Cindy would echo what I'm going to say. Thank you for your courage in coming on here today and sharing your story and what you've shared. You are very courageous. Um, I know we will continue to pray for you and your family, um, and that you do get free and you can leave the state of Utah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Any survivor that wants to get out, we can help you get out. A lot of survivors don't because they're scared about the unknown. They feel more comfortable staying where they're at because at least they know the people they're dealing with, as opposed to getting up and going someplace unknown. But I just want to let survivors know that you've got scared parts telling you not to go, not to leave. You've got programming going on is also telling you not to leave, not to go. You can't trust anyone. But for your own sake and your children's sake, there are places that will provide you safe passage and a safe place to be so you can heal, because you cannot heal if you are still entwined with your abuser or your handler. It's impossible. So for your sake, please reach out and consider moving out of state to get out of here because there is something spiritually heavy going on in this state. I felt it when I first moved here. There is a demonic control over this atmosphere, and you're always going to feel trapped unless you get help. So I ask you to contact us at info@relentlesshope.org or just go to our website. We have tons of resources and options to help you get free. And Sherry, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just was thinking about the unknown. Um, Unknown becomes known, and new becomes what is familiar, even though we get used to and comfortable with the people that we do know now. And safety is such a big thing, and every survivor deserves to have safety
Mm-hmm.
and freedom.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank
all
you guys so
right.
much for this opportunity.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
feel
thank you,
honored.
Susie.
Sherry, do you want to pray us out?
Sure, I would be happy to. Lord Jesus, I know I'm overwhelmed right now with just the brevity or the reality of Susie's story and all the survivors out there who share her situation, feel isolated, alone, overwhelmed, don't know what to do. I just ask, Lord God, that you would give them comfort and your peace that surpasses all understanding and help them to find the way out of their captivity. It's hard stuff to talk about, but it's very serious, and each survivor is precious to you. So we do ask for your protection for them. Thank you that the greatest protection you give each of us is the ability to go away and dissociate. And then as you protect the minds and the bodies of from even knowing sometimes what they even are going through, later you are there with them, just like you were with me every step of the way. I just ask that you hold each of them during this tough time of year. Thank you for the triumphs and the victories and how you overcame Satan and sin and death so that we can be overcomers and we can be victorious and more than conquerors through you, Jesus. I thank you for relentless hope, and I thank you for Cindy and Goel and the strides they have made and the stories they have allowed to be shared and all the work that they do. I just ask that you bless them and thank you for the victory that Goel doesn't have to do any jail time um and that this is over with. We just ask for your protection and your direction, Lord. And thank you for who you are and who we are because of you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you,
Thank you.
audience, for tuning in and listening to part 2 of Susie's story. And we will be back after the new year. We're going to take a break now for a couple of weeks, but we'll have a new podcast for next time. So check back with us then and have a great holiday. And God bless you.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Yes. God bless everyone. And thank you, Susie. Thank you, Cindy.